Peace and light, that old guy Australia. Coming to you from the beautiful far south coast. Apologise for the noise, but it's a gorgeous ocean down here. Well, we've woken to a Labor Socialist government. A day we hoped would never happen and dreaded, but it's occurred. And it's occurred because the people have voted for it. Or have they? Now there's some issues going on. I'm just going to get up here, won't be a sec. Up we go. That wasn't too bad for an old bloke. There's some issues going on that are going to be addressed. And I hope they're addressed over the coming week. There's many issues over this election. And we know straight up this morning, I had a good night's sleep. I didn't watch the election results. I went to bed at 8 o'clock. Sober as. Had a good night's sleep. Made a decision within myself. I was having nothing to do with the election until today, Sunday morning. And the first thing I woke up to was some videos on election fraud that had occurred at various polling stations. So we know that this was going to happen. And that happened in Canada, it happened in the US, it happened in England, it happened in France, and it happened even in Queensland when Palaszczuk got elected. So who knows? Who knows? We know that nobody can seem to find the two supposedly public posted advertisements by the government in major newspapers announcing an election. We know that the writs are supposed to be given out and signed by the Governor-General and available to every single polling station around Australia. We know that never happened. We know that the one in Victoria was signed by Dan Andrews, and it looks way different to the one that was brought out in WA. So, you know, look at this beautiful sight. Why I live where I live. There's nobody here. There's not a single person on this beach but me. Now we know that there will be allegations of electoral fraud, and we know that they've managed to stop preferencing the way they meant to under our constitution. They did this to remove people like Pauline, Craig Kelly, make sure that Malcolm Roberts, Rob Cullerton, all of the Freedom parties didn't get a seat in government. This is what they tried to do, and it looks like they may have succeeded. But how they did it, well, that's a different story. And let's hope that that's revealed over the coming weeks. Who knows? Who knows? The only ones who can produce that evidence and will be able to present that evidence really is Craig Kelly and Pauline Hanson. They're really the only two that the media will actually interview. They won't interview anybody else. And let's hope that some people in the mainstream media pick up on this. But either way, same shit, different dog. That's all it is. The people who are supposed to be in place are in place. Palaszczuk is there. We saw with Morrison, he's done his bit for his mate Klaus. I was surprised he didn't keep his position, but I guess they've got to keep changing these things to give the illusion that the people have the power and have the control, which we don't. We don't. It's all an illusion and a distraction. Really, that's what it is. You know? So Albanese's in now. But what is Albanese? The Labor Party's no longer the working party of the people. Hasn't been for decades. Back in 2010, the Greens infiltrated the Labor Party fully by doing deals with Kevin Rudd and Julia Gillard, both who were power hungry and wanted to retain power, and did deals with the Greens to retain that power so they wouldn't be voted out. Remember, Julia Gillard became Prime Minister with 34% of the vote. Did a deal with the Greens. Disgusting. Australia voted her out, she got in. That's what two-party preferred systems do. That's why we need to change our political scene before anything else can change. But that's not going to happen in the near future. It's just not. It's not. The whole thing is corrupt. It all stinks. It's a rotting carcass. That's what we have here. So Albo is going to be the one, it appears, to usher in the NWO. Now, before you think that I'm some kind of conspiracy theorist and you want to jump on board this kind of thing, I went and watched Millie's video. I know what I've said publicly, and that's fine. I'll stand by my own words and my own research. Now, she suggested that we go and read the documents put out by the WHO regarding the new agreement, which will be the pandemic treaty, to be signed, according to her, by 2024. And I understand that's when it's supposed to be signed. And we've got Chung flying out today from Australia under the Morrison government, who's no longer there, but doesn't matter. Albo won't stop him. To go to Geneva, where, for the first time ever, the WHO is holding a weekend meet. A weekend meet. A Davos group. These are the most powerful people in the world, and they control the entire world and all its masses in every single country. Now, WHO is meeting, and they're going to elect a new leader for the WHO because Tedros is the terrorist. Tedros the terrorist. Look it up. He used to be a terrorist leader. He was put in there by the Chinese. He served his purpose over the 5 years, right up through the pandemic. He served his purpose. Now put somebody else in. God knows who that'll be. So Tedros will go, provided he can't have another tenure. I don't think they can, but we'll see. I'm not sure on that. But there they're going to discuss the whole pandemic agreement, the who wants to instigate, initiate. Now, many of us have said that we're going to be handing over sovereignty, and Millie says we're not, and we've got protocols in place, we have constitution in place, we have government in place, we have legalities in place, and I understand exactly what she said. She said to go and read the document, and wish people would read it more clearly. Now, I went and read it. And there's two issues I have with it straight up. The first one is this. 90% of people who read it, like myself, won't understand it. It is very technical. Very technical. Now, understand that these people have at their fingertips and their disposal billions of dollars, trillions of dollars, unlimited funds. They have the best legal minds out. So any of these things that are written are not chaotic. They're written deliberately with the wording that is used. And it's placed that way for a purpose. And when you understand that, and then you try and look at it again, it's like, wow, what are they trying to say here? Millie even points out in her own videos that it's open-ended. There are many issues within those that aren't addressed. And I'm telling you, that's not coincidence. That is deliberate. These are the great legal minds writing it, so it is open-ended. And they're open-ended for a purpose. We know that there's a pandemic about to come. We know it's going to... Pardon me. We know it's going to hit. Swallow my own spit. We know it's going to hit. We know it's coming. That's inevitable. Those who aren't this way, we're okay. But those who are, they're going to be in a hell of a lot of trouble. Now, monkeypox. Oh, by the way, go and look on the UK government's website about what monkeypox is. Hilarious. It's absolutely hilarious. You won't believe it. I'm not even going to tell you. It's not even going to tell you what it is. And it's the same picture, the actual same picture that the US used. I was quite surprised. I got sent that, thank you very much. I was like, what? Yeah. It rhymes with Pringles. Anyway, interestingly enough, we know there's a pandemic about to break, probably over our winter months. We said that once the election's over, all hell's going to break loose. Between here and Christmas, there'll be changes on the Australian landscape you won't believe. Now, last week we saw Antonio Guterres, the head of the UN, come out and make a public statement. Now listen to what I've got to say to you on this. This is where I differ from Millie. Antonio Guterres, the head of the United Nations, came out last week. He gave a press conference where he said that he had had a meeting with Klaus Schwab, who is the leader of the WEF, the World Economic Forum, the largest private organisation that has as its members all the members of the G7 and leaders from countries right around the world. Private organisation. We know it's Bill Gates funded. The head of the UN has had a meeting with this private organisation. The head of that private organisation, Klaus Schwab, and those two have agreed, according to the press conference, and you can go and watch it, that Agenda 30 should be brought forward. Now, I've talked about this. Agenda 30 is Agenda 2030. This is an agenda that's been written that will set out the future of the planet up until 2030. Now, they've agreed to bring it forward, and I believe they're going to bring it way forward. And this will initiate the beginnings of the one world government and the one world currency, because this is what they want to bring in. This is what socialism's all about. But interestingly enough, as we've spoken about, one of the protocols within there is the removal of private ownership. Now, if you think the globalists and the elite are going to give up every part of their private ownership, then you're mistaken. Those things aren't written for them. They're written for the masses, the people. the hubris of the world, the great unwashed, we're the ones that will be asked to give up private ownership. So I'm talking buildings, cars, businesses, whatever. If you own things, you will no longer have private ownership. If you think that's bullshit, go and look up Agenda 30. Then when you've done that, come back to me. And then I'll send you a link to the press conference where the leader of the United Nations met with Klaus Schwab and said, we've got to bring this forward. Now, if that had no bearing on world events, they wouldn't have a say. What would it matter? They can't initiate it, but it's going to be initiated because the UN's backed by the WHO. And they're meeting this weekend in Geneva. Well, WHA is, but still. Same shit, different bird. Different dog. So, we now have a socialist government here in Australia, disguised as Labor, which is controlled by the Greens. So we're in a prime position, as Maria Z points out, to be the perfect test case for the WEF and the globalists to trot out their agendas. And that's what we are, out in the middle of nowhere. We have no neighbours. We're out on our own. And this is the country that will be used for this. You'll notice Dominic Perrottet is now pushing for the introduction of the green tick visa. Interesting. There were many who said when he came in that he may be a little less, savage and more lenient, a little bit more middle and centre, but he's not. They're all controlled. These people are there for a reason. You only look up who Dominic Perrottet's father is, and then you just go, dear God, we're in for it. But as I said, the phone's been running hot this morning, and thank you. I don't know how many dozens of phone calls I've had, as well as a baking session around at Woodsies. Don't forget, all it takes for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. I'd urge you not to do nothing. Don't worry about it. Some people say, no, nothing we can do. Well, there is. And it's up to us, as not just humans, but as people, to fight, as communities, to fight. We must fight. Join groups that will fight against this. Because if we don't, we cannot win. We must fight. Let's believe that Pauline and maybe, maybe Craig Kelly or somebody can expose what's happened. We've had some scrutineers come from ballot stations last night saying that the AEC representative were putting the preferences in the wrong ballot boxes deliberately. They approached them and spoke to them about it. They pretty much told them to piss off and this is how it's going to be. They were not supposed to go to Labor Liberal. They were supposed to come down. I don't know if you know how balloting works with preferences. But it wasn't the marbles. So let's hope that they're able to expose some of this. The fact that nobody can seem to find where these two major papers published a publication of the actual election, or where the writs are. Nobody had writs. Polling stations were being asked, they didn't have them. The one that was being bandied around in Victoria was signed by Dan Andrews and not the Governor-General. The one that McGowan had in Western Australia looked like it came from a foreign country that didn't even look like it was an Australian writ. So yes, let's hope somehow the media gets hold of this and let's push for support on this. There has to be an investigation. It didn't happen with Trump. It didn't happen with Trudeau. It didn't happen with what's he in France? What's his name? Forgotten it now. Macaroon. Whatever his name is. I've forgotten. It didn't happen even with Palaszczuk in Victoria, who used Dominion voting software to count their votes. None of these investigations have happened, and that's the frustrating part about it for us who are pushing for this, us freedom fighters. That's the hard part for us, that nothing seems to happen. We need the media to suddenly get on board somehow. Some people within the media to wake up, because the media won't get on board with it. They're owned by two companies, BlackRock, Vanguard, we know that. But we need people within the media to begin to question. That's what we need. Guys like Ben Fordham to push. Either way, forward we go into the great unknown. Albo is now the head. Morrison's done his bed, he stepped aside. Let's put pressure on Albo to remove the 90-year suppression order on the Woods Commission report. But believe me, there's plenty of pedos in Labor and the Greens. The Greens wanted to lower the age of consent to 13. Wow. Dear God. Anyway, pushing forward. continue on. Peace and light. That Old Guy Australia on Instagram and YouTube. I love you all. You're a fantastic bunch of people. We did our best. Let's continue and do better.